Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to a Celtic World the Tactical Review, the show that does a deep dive into Celtic's matches, usually on the weekends. But because of the Scottish Government, the police, and Celtic, the game actually kicks off in about 6 hours' time. 6 hours' time, our time, as we go live. So obviously, we're not going to be discussing Celtic versus Dundee Flag Day. So we're just trying to have a bit of a chat, Paul and I, about the season that's coming, everything that happened in the preseason, what we got up to, the World Cup, Celtic's lack of transfer business, all that and more. So it's going to be a little bit of a free flow tonight, not our usual format. Next week for our usual deep dive. So with that in mind, it's been a while since I've had drinks with Paul, but Paul, welcome back. Another season. They don't get very long off. We don't get long off. You had a wee guest stint with Hamish. I did a wee guest stint with Paul John on Axon. But apart from that, we've kept our powder dry. We've just been relaxing, been a good paddock. And here we are. Cheers.
Yeah. Good to be back on. Needed the break, I think. Like you said, did a little bit with Hamish. We did a little crossover show with our friends in the States quite a few weeks ago. The World Cup was still on.
Hi, Shawnee.
Hey, Shawnee. Which was good fun. But I was probably still a bit over the season that had just been at that point. And absolutely needed the break. Life's been pretty hectic anyway. World Cup has obviously been taking up a lot of time. A bit going on personally. So yeah, I think last season, I think we'll all agree, was difficult. Putting it mildly, for a chunk of the season. Stressful. More greys over the course of last season. And by the end, I think we were all as delighted as we were. I think we were, certainly I was just done with it. And yeah, just really needed to take a time and sort of step back and step away from it. My wife kept saying, "Why is this football on all the time?" I said, "This is the off season." This is the off season. The World Cup's the off season. So yeah, she didn't really love the World Cup as much as I did. I think we got a grand total of about 2 weeks between the World Cup and the start of the season, something like that. And yeah, I've kept away from the friendlies. I've not watched anything live, or I've not even watched replays at 90 minutes. I've watched highlights, and to be honest, I think a mixture of how last season went and how the closed season of transfers has gone meant I didn't think there was much meaningful to get from those sort of friendlies. Plus, a lot of the squad was still away. Anyone that did see me pop up on Hamish show the other week may have found me slightly more negative territory than those that watch me regularly or us regularly would be accustomed to seeing from me. But that's kind of where I'd landed. I was, to use a good Scots phrase, absolutely scunnered with all things Celtic and Celtic board and transfers, etc. But I think you will potentially find me in a more positive mood this evening. Amazing what buying one quality. Well, we already had one quality striker by the looks of Turan, but yeah, breaking the transfer record for what we think it looks like an absolute quality addition. And Casper Who has put a little bit of a spring in my step, because for a lot of times in the last 12, 18 months, it's a kind of signing that I just didn't think we were kind of interested in doing or capable of. So at least that's something, and we'll get into the detail, but I think there's still a lot of angst in the Celtic, the big Celtic world out there, but I've got a little bit more of a circumspect view in it. And happy to share that as we go. Yeah, don't worry, I've not gone soft on the board or turned into a happy clapper, but I've decided to approach this season with a more positive state of mind, more for my own mental health than anything else. But yeah, we'll get into that in a bit.
I'll bring up some comments and then we'll get into it. William O'Toole, hail to you. Tactics, what we're doing, we're doing one up and then we're going to hang on to the ball, safe passing, tee-hee-hee. Well, Martin's theoretically had the pre-season to impart his style and system on the team. Admittedly, he's probably had about a third to a quarter of a third to half the squads for most of pre-season, so I don't know how that's sort of worked and gone down, but we're going to find out in 6 hours' time. Shorty Boy saying, good to see you all back. Yes, no, we had signed on with Gav in the closed season. Not even a packet of crisps or a pint of Guinness, but we're doing it for the love of football, and we love to be under the Celtic World umbrella. So thank you to our fearless leader, Gav, for everything he does in the background. Dexter's making a valid point here. We do appreciate that Axom does run over and it's run into this time slot, Dexter, but unfortunately we also need our beauty sleep. Otherwise, Paul gets cranky, and we have jobs. Unfortunately, we'd love this to be our full-time gig, but unfortunately it is not.
It is. We should hasten to add, for anyone who's new, it's 8:30 p.m. in Perth, WA, West Australia. By the time we finish this, there'll be a short nap, and we'll be back up to watch the game at 2:30 a.m. So we slot it in where we can, and we appreciate people coming along for the journey.
And if you can join us live, that's fantastic, and we love everyone who gets involved in the comments section. But if you can't watch us live, watch us in delay. And leave your comments in the actual YouTube video itself. I do read them all, positive and negative. So if you've got anything that you'd want to add and say, we're always listening. We're both on Twitter, X as well. So we're easy to find if you want to have a chat about anything related to Celtic. These are our own views, and and like we just like to try and keep it positive, but try and give a bit of a keen eye on what we're actually trying to do with the ball on the park. Because there's plenty of podcasts that devote a lot of time to what's going off it, but we're going to be a little bit indulgent tonight because we have the beauty of going on before the game for a change. Usually we're on a Monday night after the game, so a bit of a unique situation this week. But we thought we'd take the opportunity. Shorty Boy, he's mentioned the last tie. Yep, that's been announced today. We're playing the Austrian champions in our Champions League knockout tie. We'll have a wee discussion about that a bit later on. And I'll look at it as it's the great man himself, Chris. Good to see you, mate. Haven't been on me in a while, but yes, definitely. Hopefully catch up with you on the airwaves on Axom sometime during the season. Paul, the first thing we had done was what we got up to. I think the last time we actually saw each other in person was Scotland versus Haiti. Which seems like a lifetime ago.
Indeed.
Both in terms of a World Cup wrapped up, Scotland's campaign done and dusted in the space, straight sets, as you had predicted. You had said out on goal difference, so we are basically third place, but not good enough to go through, which was, as it turned out, spot on.
I tipped us, I think, to be the ninth best third place, which would have seen us marginally miss out. I think we were 10th or 11th in the end, so or maybe even 13th or 14th. So it wasn't even slightly close. I didn't want to be right on that, but it just seemed like it would be likely, given the quality of the other two teams in our group. And our now ex-managers' propensity to be cautious or overcautious. So we got what we deserved. We got what we deserved, I think.
A couple of quick points. I just want to say that day we had a Blaster Brewery, and it's a Scottish pub in our neck of the woods. It was a great morning. Like, it was a morning thing. The game kicked off at 9 a.m. We're on the beers at 6 a.m. We're having pies and square sliced sausage in a roll and black pudding. It was fantastic. The atmosphere was great. It was a piper at halftime. Like, you could not fault the atmosphere. Everyone was up for it. It was fantastic. It was great. And that,
but 800 Scots fans and I think one Haiti fan. It was amazing.
to get to experience that, the atmosphere was fantastic. And by all accounts, how the Scottish fans, the Tartan Army, accounted for themselves in Boston was fantastic. We've now created links between Glasgow and Boston and all sorts of things. So from that point of view, absolutely fantastic. The support, the way we all embraced it, and wherever we were in the world, absolutely excellent. The football on the park, absolutely turgid. Just like the absolute, and like the opposite of the passion that we showed as fans was shown on the park. It was so negative and just so drab and dreary and just so negative. I didn't feel that Steve Clarke had anywhere to go but to resign. I mean, that interview he gave to Ellie Barber at the last game was just dreadful, and just, you know, that was for me that was the nail in the coffin anyway. But
he spoke to Connie McLaughlin pretty similarly as well, either at the previous match or the same game. Just like, nobody wants to do those at that time, but it's part of the gig. Like, you've got to just front up and be professional. You get paid pretty well, and people want to hear your response. So yeah, like, none of what I can't disagree with anything you've said.
And then he's gone. All right. So who to next? Well, that's still obviously being decided. The only people who take longer to appoint a manager than Celtic is the SFA. So, like, you know, it's like, hey guys, hold my beer. And then there was a post that came up which ties into this whole thing of like, well, where to next for Scotland as a team, which is obviously we've got aging stars, if you want to use the term stars. So where the next players coming from? And out of the first 4 SPFL games that played on the weekend, only 26 of the possible 88 starters in those 4 matches were Scottish players. 26 out of 88. Dundee United, Rangers, and Kilmarnock only fielded 1 Scottish player each. Falkirk had 7. Presumably tonight, Celtic will have Cal McGregor, Kieran Tierney, or either Ralston or, well, maybe not Ralston. So there's definitely 2. Maybe Luke McCowan, because I don't think Negron's fit. So that's possibly 3 at the best, you'd say. Oh, Dane Murray, 4, because Dane Murray, because Stales is suspended. So potentially Celtic will field 4 Scottish players tonight. Where do we go, Paul? I mean, I know it's the Celtic podcast, and we're going to talk about Celtic, but I just may as well, the elephant in the room. It's like, it's all well and good saying, sack the manager, bring in the youth, but where is it?
Well, yeah, well, you and I exchanged quite a few messages in the immediate aftermath of the exit of the World Cup, and we, between us, I think, did some digging on, and we found a couple of articles that had done some even more digging than we'd done, and essentially, I think I did. I think I chucked into AI like, what are teams like Norway, Belgium, like all these teams that are
teams with similar populations.
So yeah, I went below and above, and I think we set the population about Scotland about 5.5 million, I think, give or take. So an up to 10, which takes you up towards Belgium, that kind of country, and Croatia's only 3 million. I think Norway's 6.5. So not dissimilar. And there's a good chunk of teams in there that were at the World Cup. And nearly every, I think actually every European team that is around that size, so say call it second tier European football, if we're being generous to Scotland, second tier, they all have some sort of quota of homegrown players in teams, squads, in some cases in the starting lineup. But they've all got some sort of quota that's agreed by the association and the clubs. And to me, that it's no surprise then that if you do that for long enough, your national team's gonna be better. The problem we've got in Scotland, we have done for ages, is we import talent that we can get in that's cheaper than sticking with our own kids, and blocks pathways for our own kids. And then you shared that article with me the other day, I think yesterday or the day before, or maybe you think it was probably just yesterday, that basically showed that one of the reasons that English academies are snapping up the best talent in Scotland is not because they think those players are actually going to make the grade, and the odd one will, but they're a cheaper alternative. I think the numbers were sort of 130. They could pay 130 grand compensation to take a young Scottish kid instead of it would cost about 400 grand to bring the equivalent player through the English system. So they're saving themselves 270 grand up front per player. And they don't really expect most of those players to make the grade or even, become a superstar. They are to pad out the youth systems in England and give a slightly better quality player for a much cheaper cost to fill out those squads and make meaningful contributions to get one or two superstars to come through. And if they manage to get a player that comes through that's worth 20, 30, 40, 50 million, then it doesn't matter how much money they've thrown at the system. They've more than covered their costs and had a benefit. So as you wrote, I think you just sent me the article and wrote grim, and it is grim. And that's what we're stuck with. These young players will, they're getting chewed up by the system, but they're also getting paid 2, 3, 4 times what they would get paid here. And the only rationale for staying over going for the cash and the glitz to some degree, if you think there's glitz, is there a pathway here? If we can show, and I don't just mean Celtic and Rangers, because it is going to be harder there, but we've got to find a path. And I think that's where quotas work. And Celtic and Rangers have got to be at the forefront of that conversation. And people would say, well, that diminishes our potential in Europe. Well, we're diminishing our own potential in Europe. And to speak about elephants in the room, we've actually got more of a quota when we go play in Europe in terms of having homegrown players in and around the squad.
We have at home. We lost out on a couple of players in our squad in Europe last year because we didn't have enough homegrown talent.
We didn't have enough. Yeah, exactly. And obviously you got the B list, which is unlimited, but UEFA actually make you list a certain number of homegrown players, both club grown and system grown. And if you can't do that, then you have to offer reduced numbers. There's no such restriction in the Scottish League. We could just ditch. We could have 30, a full squad of 0 homegrown players, 0 connection to Scotland. So unless we do something about it for ourselves, there's no magic wand going to get waved by someone else. We're probably taking a bit too much time on here, but
just to tie it back to Celtic, Paul, I was just trying to say Zion Pullen, 15 years old, scored in his debut for the under-19s. He's 15, scored for the under-19s, came off the bench. Apparently had 100 goal involvements last season for his age group. He's the next one that's ready to get tapped by an English club. You just know it because, we're
the other thing about the other thing about Pullen is he also qualifies for Spain, and Spain have already capped him. So we've not there's a double edged sword. Scotland have missed out on him already. And he's got I think he's got one Spanish parent, one Scottish parent. So it could have either gone either way. But if the Spanish system wants you, and this isn't just padded out systems, if the Spanish system wants you, clearly
World Cup winners.
His stats even at a young age are phenomenal. And he obviously can't sign a professional contract till he's 16, at which point he will get probably swept up by the English system. I think the only way you got half a chance of avoiding that is if you pick him before he turns 16.
Which means you have to break in this season.
Exactly. But I don't Wayne Rooney was playing forever in it. I think 16 or 15 and a bit, nearly just or barely 16. Now we're going back a few years, but and Rooney was a heavily developed kid. But I think if you've got the talent, we've got to give these players a chance. If you look at the whatever team starts there will be weaker than hopefully than the squad we've got in a few months' time. And if you look at the first day of the season fixture list and team lines every season for the last probably 4 or 5, it's probably been wildly different to how we end up a few weeks or months later. So these early season matches, we've got to win them, but the squad is weaker and everyone's, underdone. If somebody's I want Thomas Hatton to start tonight. I think we should be starting him tonight. He's had a brilliant preseason. We're light on wingers. Just give him a start and see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? He doesn't have a great game and he comes off after 50, 60 minutes. I just think this is where we need to be. We've got a requirement to try and win every game and win every competition. But the standard in Scottish football has been dropping for a few years. And I think if you've got genuine talent, let them loose. Let them loose, especially in attacking it. I can see why. If you look at players like Donovan, he got roasted against Hearts last year. Dane Morris had a few nightmares. If you're a young goalkeeper or a centre back or a defender, I can see, you've got more pressure on you. If you're a winger, just let him loose. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You get kicked up in the air a bit and, you get booted out of the game and you have to come off. Like, the upside massively outweighs the downside for me. And I think you just need to get some players minutes and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think our wingers really have any claim to either of those two wing positions. I mean, obviously, Yang's not featured in any of our preseason matches. He was away with South Korea and he's back now. But, Tinekti's I watched the AC Milan game, so I was doing the coverage for Axon that night, and he did nothing. He was on the park for about 55, 60 minutes, and Hatton did more in like 2 minutes than Tinekti had done for the whole time he was on the park. So you looked at it and go, oh, seniority, it should be Tinekti, but I'd be like, we'll play the young kid because, like you say, what is there to lose? You're at home against Dundee. If it doesn't work, you can take him off at half time if it's really going that badly. But I honestly don't think it will. I think he'd be quite a handful. He cut inside a number of times. He was very unlucky. He jinked past 3 AC Milan players and then he whacked that wicked shot that just went over the bar. He's very unlucky. So for me, he was one of the standout. The young players that got minutes. He was definitely the one that sort of caught the eye. And our other, and we talk about signings, Paul. Camilo Duran, like he's been the one sort of bright spark spot, whatever you want to say, in our preseason. He's scored in every game he's played in. He looks dangerous. He's Kyogo-esque in that he's always playing on the shoulder. He's always trying to get in behind. So you're always, if you can get that ball to him, he's always a chance. He took his goal against AC Milan incredibly well. And his build-up play for James Forrester's goal was exceptionally good as well. It was a lot of awareness because he did all the chasing and the hard work and the pressing, but then had the ability and the presence of mind to look up and pick the pass. Because how many times have you seen it where like Ameda does a bit of a bull in the china shop and does all the hard work and then fluffs his lines with the final pass? So he actually had that in his locker as well. So a lot to like there. And I guess in terms of talking about, tactics, it's like, you'd be very tempted to try and find a way to get both Duran and Hu into the same starting lineup because you've spent 5.5, 6 million, whatever spent on Duran. You probably can't really afford to have that sitting on the bench at the moment, given how sort of threadbare our wing positions squad is. So, I mean, you could make a case for sort of playing 2 up top and playing one side sort of without a winger and just giving the fullback the sort of the what's the word I'm looking for, the permission just to sort of bomb on.
Permission,
just to sort of use a KT, just sort of say, look, you can bomb on and get further forward, or alternatively, AJ on the right side. That's of course if AJ's playing tonight. I'm sure everyone's still a Celtic player at the moment, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. But they were sort of the two sort of things that really stood out to me in the sort of bits that I watched. I definitely didn't get up in the middle of the night to watch the first 2 friendlies. The AC Milan one was a bit more of a 10 o'clock, was a bit more of a palatable, on a Saturday night it was a little bit more palatable in terms of staying up to watch a game for Celtic in a pre-season sort of competition. But it just frustrates me, Paul, is that had Casper Hu been in the building the week before, 2 weeks before, Celtic Park would have been rocking with 45,000 in the ground, and the place would have been busy. There'd have been an atmosphere. We want to see a new signing, but because Celtic drag their heels and take forever to get business done, and I know the argument is you're bringing in quality, but it still takes forever. They shot themselves in the foot with those friendlies. The poor turnout against Middlesbrough, poor turnout against AC Milan, and hence I'm rocking a Mexico top tonight because I'm dropping money. I want to buy merchandise, but I refuse to buy Celtic merchandise until they actually spend some money. And all right, they've dropped a record fee on Hu. Fantastic. But you need more than centre forwards. You need wingers. You need midfielders. looks like we're going to need another right back. And that's not to mention a goalkeeper, a backup left back, and probably another central midfielder that we needed anyway to bolster our stocks. I'm trying not to be too negative here, Paul, but
It's all valid.
I'm not going to be dazzled by a couple of centre forwards who effectively are replacing Kyogo and your big man Ida. I mean, effectively that's what you're replacing.
Well, yeah, and 18 months and 12 months too late. It's fair. It's fair. Yeah, like I say, I didn't watch very much of preseason. And other than some minutes for some younger players like Hatton and fringe players, it was genuinely exciting. And to get Duran settled into the squad a bit, and to get some of the players that weren't at the World Cup a little bit of, match practice. It's really all it's there for. And in a World Cup year, you've got a much more disjointed preseason anyway, and it's truncated and shrunk with only 3 meaningful games. Which is why, obviously the window's still open for the best part of a month. Even though we're into the competitive part of the season, it will still feel a bit pre-season-like for the next few weeks as teams get up to speed. The good news is if we can get off to a flyer tonight, we've got a jump on our so-called competition. We'll see who ends up the competition this year. One of the reasons and people will no doubt say that I'm getting carried away, but there's a multitude of reasons why I'm pretty positive. And I may look stupid come the end of the window on this. Won't be the first time I've looked a bit daft. I share the frustration on the speed of a transfer and getting business done. It's ludicrously slow. And I think part of it is probably because Nicholson's no more than a puppet that has to go and get permission from his boss every time he spends more than 800 grand. And I know that there's a lot to cover here, so I might go on for a bit, and feel free to stop me or redirect the question if you want. And there's a lot of frustration with how Martinoneill conducting interviews. And I sort of get that if you take these at face value, which I don't. And I know for a lot of fans, certainly our younger fans, this is over the last few months, is the first they've really seen of O'Neill in this kind of format, in the pointy end of being the manager. But there's not just this stuff the other day about when he was like, oh, really, 14, and he's coming along like a doddery of Martinoneill, despite the fact he's 74, is sharp as a tack. There's no way that he doesn't know how many bodies have left. And certainly that a good chunk of the number that gets bandied around is loanees in and out that, we're out because we wanted them off the books. We're in and weren't good enough, so go again. Most of them. There's the odd one that we would have liked to keep. And if you take those comments at face value, I'm sorry, I can't really help you. They're there to serve a purpose. They're there to, play silly buggers with the media, to drop messages. If other teams, players and managers are daft enough to take that at face value, like some of our fans appear to be taking at face value, and underestimate him or us because of those interviews, well, they've done their job, right? Anyone that underestimates him based on those interviews will come a cropper. You only have to look at how he galvanized that squad in the 2 stints he was in. You look at, I was just reading about his points record, his average points record. If his points last season had been averaged over the whole season, if he'd been in for 38 games, 99 points we would have returned. We'd have absolutely strolled the league. So he had a tremendous return for the games he was in. He's not achieving that if he's a dodgy idiot that is a laughable fool to the players and he should be in a retirement home. Obviously, there's one message to the media and the public, and there's a completely different message behind closed doors, both with the board and his players. And it's about protecting the team and putting some pressure on the paymasters. And
I'd also say, Paul, just to add there, also to protect the coaching staff as well. Because if we were in a situation where Sean Maloney, for argument's sake, was the head coach or head manager, he would not get the time of day that Martinoneill gets in press conferences and the way to manage it. So I do think he's a bit of a lightning rod and an ability just to deflect a lot of, you know what Scottish media is like. They can go on and on and on. So he just has a way of being able to nullify that and just lets Fozzie, Maloney get on with their job. It allows the players to get on with their job. And that in itself is half the battle, especially in Scotland, especially with this mentality that, Hearts are Hearts and Rangers are Rangers. And then the only thing I wanted to mention was I saw some comments today about Rangers fans going, oh, how smart does Derek McInnes look in his brogues and his suit? And look at Martinoneill in his tracksuit and he's got his socks tucked into his tracksuit. And it's like, the guy's got a winner's medal. The guy's got many winner's medals. Like, what's Derek McInnes got? One League Cup against Ross County? Like it doesn't even compare. But that's what they're interested in. We're interested in the football and winning stuff. They're worried about what their manager's wearing. So, they're a weird bunch, but carry on.
And yeah, and another thing I was going to say is I absolutely think that he's got pressure on the board for signings. He'll be as frustrated as anyone else with the speed that things are happening. But if I want to, and you know me, I'm tend to be a glass half full kind of guy. I've certainly dipped at times over the last 6 to 12 months.
Understandable. It's understandable, Paul.
Yeah,
understandable.
But I think there's enough there. Yes, it's too slow. Yes, it's dragged out. Yes, we're low balling. But there's enough in the reported stuff, and I believe that a fair amount of that is genuine. There's genuine interest in the players we're linked with. None of those players we're being linked with, really, bar one or two, and really the only ones that you would say would be potential backups or fringe would be the left back cover for Tierney, which we know we need. Everyone else linked looks like a starter. They look like a starter quality player. And we're starting the bidding at 3, 4, 5 when the other team wants 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The other frustration is we've got 70, 80 million in the bank, and we clearly
doesn't help.
Well, no, I was going to say we clearly aren't willing to spend that. We're really working on a basis of players in, players out, money in, money out. So if you look at and I'm delighted we spent 11, 12 million on Who and another 5 or 6 on Duran. It's a ton of outlay, but I would say of course it's needed. But I'm going to say we're borderline break even at the moment. Dyson went for 8 to 10 with Rising 2. You've got 3.5 for Palma. You've got a bit for Naroski. There's other money like floating around for fringe players that's gone out. We're probably only 3 or 4 million out, like up front, for the fact we've signed 2 players that are 16, 17, 18 million. So, and I think that is what's kind of holding things up. Like, I feel like the Bauer deal will probably happen. Why we haven't just gone and get it done and get him in for the start of the season is anyone's, like, that's the frustration. But I think that will happen. The player clearly sounds like he wants to come. So player power usually
terms have been agreed.
Player power, the same way in and out, right? So it looks like Arne Engels wants to go. It looks like Alistair Johnston wants to go. If that's going to be the case, they'll be gone, right? It's just a case of when, and we'll be trying to push for about, the hardest bargain we can without leaving ourselves not enough time to get players in. If we go, the biggest danger we've got here is not having enough quality players in for this qualifier. And we'll get to that in a minute when the draw's been made. Unless we've got replacements coming in and can be bedded in with at least a game ahead of time, neither Engels or AJ should be gone before that qualifier. Now, I think they will be. I think, so here's the thing. I think we've probably identified the replacements. And if you're asking me, I think we should be go straight back. If we're going to get, I know people like we can talk about AJ's fee in a minute if we want to do that. But if we're getting 14, 15 million for Alistair Johnston, Bournemouth have just signed a right back. We should be straight down the road for Araujo 7-8 million, whatever it is, and we're up on the deal, and we've got an able replacement who knows and seems to have had a whale of a time here, and I think would be pretty easy to persuade to come back. And then this Lithuanian whose pronunciation escapes me just quickly, Giannitis, I think it is, and we look like we're interested in him, and his club want 12, and he looks like a ready-made replacement at 6'3" and 30 caps for Lithuania at the age of 22 for Arnie Engels. If Engels goes for upwards of 20 million, again, you're making an 8 million.
You're only investing 50% of it back in to buy the next player.
Exactly. So the net is, but you should be able to have that into the next player, and you should have some spare for other players. We need a winger, and
but then, Paul, you make the Champions League. There's 40 million pounds.
Well, yeah, of course, and of course there is. And if we operated like a sensible organization, we would spend some of the 70, 80 in the bank, 20, 25 maybe, with the view of, there's 40 to come. But our little miserly custodians don't operate on that basis. So it's move the squad out, move the squad in. And to be honest, right, as much as I'd love us to spend more money, if we just spent, the deals we're doing, if we just did the player trading that we're talking about in a timely fashion, I'd settle for. I think most of us would settle for that, because you're selling a player for 25 million, you replace him with a 12 million pound player. You're getting good players. All the players we've been linked with would, if we landed the majority of them, I think we end up with a better squad than we had last season, and that's all any of us want, is to strengthen the squad year on year. So I, against my better judgment, and knowing that this board is incompetent and has let us down multiple times before, I think the Martinoneill factor is making me think, and I'm sure it's coming from O'Neill, that it's first team players he wants, and it's first team players that we appear to be identifying. So we can get the majority of these ones we've been linked with are very similar quality, I think, and we get them in before the Euro qualifier. I think we're in position for a decent season.
That's the problem, Paul, is that for me, you said, all right, we're probably identified replacements for Arnie Engels and AJ and anyone else that's going. Okay. But going on current track record for trying to get deals over the line, you're talking about 10 days of negotiations just to get it to the point of a medical. And then you've got the medical, and then that's another couple of days. And that's them just in the building to start training. And then you'll be another week to 2 weeks before they actually can participate in your team. So like you're basically a month, and that's the problem. And this
is going to have to be. It's going to have to be speeded up. It's going to have to be speeded up. And I cannot believe that Martinoneill, Sean Maloney, Fozzie, and the rest will allow Engels and or AJ to walk out the door without some strong assurances that the replacement is walking in the door within a matter of hours.
Well, it's a double-edged sword to that, Paul, as well, because, all right, you want them here for the qualifiers if there's not a ready-made replacement ready to walk in, right? But the flip side is if they leave too late in the window, then it's the old, we didn't have time to bring in the replacement. We tried really hard, and we,
of course,
those pesky agents and those wages down in England, and it makes it really tough, Paul, to negotiate.
Yeah, no, all of that's true to some degree. The other issue is if you keep them and they're ultimately going to let them go, how committed are they to the cause for those games? Like their number one motivation isn't to go in, play out of their skin.
I would feel a lot better playing last in a couple of weeks' time with Arnie Engels and AJ in that starting lineup than them not being in that starting lineup. That's whether they're committed or they think they've one foot at the door or whatever.
I don't disagree, but I think you're better off with two players that are just signed and in the door than you are with two players that will one eye out the door.
If that's the case, because we're 2 weeks away from a Champions League qualifier. Is that right? Am I right?
3, I think. Is it not? Is it 3? I thought it was 3. I think it's best.
All right, right, okay. So if you sign him this week, that effectively gives you 2 and a bit weeks of training with a actual squad. So you could probably push that out to sometime next week. If the replacements aren't in the building by then, you can't be letting them go.
Yeah. But no,
based on what we've witnessed for the last 2 months.
No,
Because
I don't
in 2 months we've brought in Duran.
I don't disagree. As I say, we're gonna have to move faster.
Right. I'm going to bring some comments up, and then we're going to move on to what was next on my list. Preview the match, other results. Other results. That's amusing. Young men, when are the old team back? Will it be Thursday? Yes, the Thursday show will be back this week, so I've been told. So yes, fear not. We've told Gav that he needs to get his singing voice on, so we'll see what he does with that. Jake's saying, we just noticed that you guys are on. Yep, there'll be this time every Monday night until the clocks change. Don't ask me what time we go to then, but at the moment, this is the time. Same batch.
We'll slide forward by half an hour, I think, is what we'll do at that point.
Do. Yes, we slide forward by half an hour to avoid Axom. That juggernaut that is Axom. Paul John Dykes, we can't compete. And then what's Big Dom saying here? He's saying, if we get quality players in, we at least double our money when we sell them. I know, Dom. Speaking to the converted, we totally agree with you, mate. It's so simple. It is. Football's a simple thing. On the park, off the park. But we seem to make it so complicated when it doesn't need to be. And then there's a comment here. I don't really want to mention this person, but McKenna's saying that he's a league-winning manager without winning a medal. What does that mean? Well, that's just the Scottish media trying to contort themselves into thinking that he's adequate competition for Martinoneill. And he's already unravelling. He's ready up to Nick Walsh after a game. Won each draw with Dundee United. Apparently quite lucky to get a point in the end. I think Dundee United were pushing for a winner. And there was definitely a Dundee United chance that looked very much onside, that the linesman flagged offside in real time, which I thought they weren't allowed to do that. But anyway, let's not digress. But apparently there was a free kick that Rangers should have got, and he was straight up to Nick Walsh. This is Derek McInnes, who's on a 3-match suspended sentence for his comments last season calling refereeing decisions disgusting in games that he wasn't even involved in. Enough said about him. He's a tube. He will get found out. The only question I said to Paul this week is it going to be Halloween or Christmas? We will see.
Let's hope for Christmas.
I'm really not fussed, but I just want to see that cycle go around again where they sack the manager halfway through a season. Anyway, and then other results, Hearts get beat by Aberdeen. Apparently Hearts unlucky. Apparently played quite well, had heaps of chances, but Aberdeen just 1-2'd them in injury time and walked away 2-1 winners. So that's, amusing.
Got a bit of a track record of blowing things late in games, Hearts, have they not? That seems to be a bit of a recurring theme.
Here's a stat for you, Paul. I came across this. I don't know if you saw it, and I sent it to you on Twitter tonight. Hibs have gone 25 matches where they have conceded first without winning the game.
Wow.
So that's 525 days where if they concede the first goal, they don't win the game. Quite a stat. Because Celtic's currently on 0, because obviously our last game was against Hearts and we went 1-0 down and we obviously beat them. But yeah, that's sort of maybe speaks to Hibs' mentality, but I just thought it was a bit random stat. It was quite an outlier because everyone else is like 3 or 4 games and then Hibs are like 25 matches. So that's you think you'd go over the line eventually, but interesting. Anyway.
Very Jekyll and Hyde side though, Hibs, aren't they? Like if they get ahead and they can look really good, and then they managed to battle back in. I can't remember who they were even playing in that Europa game, but they managed to turn that tie around. So positive that they and Motherwell are both sort of through to the next qualifying round. The more of those, the better. Don't fancy Hearts' chance very much. They've got pumped by Sturm Graz 6-0, and now they're off to play Benfica. So I would imagine they'll be in the conference before, and even then, I think the conference has still got to go through qualifiers.
They're not qualified for that.
They're not straightforward either. So yeah, I fear some of our other peers in the league might not be helping the coefficient much this season either, which is part of the problem we've got. Another reason why money really needs to be spent early and heavily to try and qualify for this Champions League campaign, because unfortunately it looks like this might be last one for a while, as we'll be dropping to, I think, something like the second. We'll have to go through 2 or 3 rounds of qualifying from next year onwards. I don't have the exact stats on that, but I know the coefficients drop off a cliff next season, and it's going to get a lot harder to qualify for the Champions League. So we blew it last year with a really pretty strong chance, and we've now got another tough tie with the Austrian champions Lask, and I think that is one of the tougher ties we could have pulled from.
I find AET Athens was probably the. Oh, sorry, we
couldn't get them because they moved across.
Viking, yeah.
Vikings
Stavanger
Stavanger would have been the hardest, given that they pipped Bodo Glimt to the title in Norway, so they would have been no mugs and partway through their season. So I think that would have been the hardest tie. But I think Lask is probably the second toughest tie we could have got. If you want to look at that kind of with a positive spin, which I will try and do, is that they only just pipped Sturm Graz to the title last year. Graz the better goal difference, but lost out by 2 points. And we know that Graz team because we've played them recently. And so, I think any of those games at this time of the season, as Kairat proved last year, they're fraught with danger. And if you don't get it right and you're not well equipped, then you run the risk of going out.
We are playing our first tie at home as well, so that's not.
Yeah, ideal. Like I'm not so bothered about that, to be honest. I think I know that's the way around it was at Kairat last year, but in these games, it's not as, I think a lot of people felt it was kind of written in the stars we might end up back in Almaty, which would have been, it would be nice to maybe try and right that wrong, but it's a hellish trip as it was last year. I think we're much better just, a wee bounce into Europe and off to Austria. So I think, that I've tipped us to qualify for the Champions League and to do quite well this year, but that's all caveated by getting the business done. Players. Getting the business done right, yeah. And yeah, look, I don't want, we are self-confessed Arne Engels fans on this show, and we've been kind of expecting his leaving for the last little while. Doesn't mean we're happy about it, but if a player wants to move on and you maximize the sign and the income you can get from him, as long as you reinvest that's absolutely fine. And Alistair Johnson, a massive presence, and the two of them were critical to us winning the title last season when they came back and what they did to the team and the squad generally. But if you go and get good money for them and you reinvest that properly in a timely fashion, that's the model. I don't think anyone complains if you do that right. It's when we did it right for a lot of years, and we've done it well. We've just botched it badly for the last 2 or 3. But it's not, as we touched on earlier, it's not a complicated model. These players are now being identified. We just need to actually get them over the line. And the Casper Hood deal proves that we can do it. Yes, it was still a bit slow and dragged out, but that's a deal that when that fell over in January, no one was surprised. When that came back on the radar a few weeks ago, in fact,
no one believed it.
Well, yeah, and I was on with Hamish and Sim on Celtic KM the day that story started to come back to life. The Egyptian Hassan was being mentioned. Bauer was still kind of bubbling around and still dragging out, and we were talking about if we got those 3. I hasten to add, I wasn't being enthusiastic. If we got those 3 players, that'd be amazing. And when I was asked directly by Hamish, what do you think about Casper? I said, I'm sure he'll be a great signing for whoever picks him up, because there was absolutely no chance. I said, I'm sure the fans of his club will be delighted. I didn't expect us to get over. I was particularly negative at that point. There was, I was probably the deepest point in my preseason in terms of how I felt, because the Bauer deal seemed like a shoe-in. We'd already let Elijah Just walk, stroll away when that was an obvious signing we probably should have made. So I just didn't believe we would get that done. I thought we were too incompetent. Somebody else would come in over the top and pay the money and he'd be off there. So I was proven wrong on that one. I did hope that it would build some momentum. That seems to have crunched a grind and halt. Nicholson maybe needed a lie down for a few days after spending that amount of money. But yeah, I still retain a little bit of optimism that, you know, some of these deals will get done, and enough of these deals will get done to hopefully put us in a position to qualify for that time.
No, we're playing Dundee tonight, Paul. Flag Day. There's a bit of an interview quote I read about Stephen Presley, Elvis, Dundee manager. Still there 12 months later. Said, you know, maybe I'm a jobby manager. Still there. Actually, I'd try to do the season with Dundee, given, you know, what his budget and everything he had to work with. And he's just saying that his wife has only just moved to Dundee, like, for this season. His job is so tenuous that they couldn't afford for her to move up to live with them. So he pretty much spent all of last year on his own. And it's just something that sort of gets overlooked, the whole isolation and what people put themselves through for a job. You know, everyone thinks football's glamorous and it's like you're lucky to be a football manager or a football player. But here he is, he lives down in Carlisle or somewhere like that. And that's where his wife is. But he's been basically living in a flat in Dundee by himself for the last 12 months because he wasn't sure he was going to have a job for long enough to warrant getting accommodation out for his wife. It's just, I take my hat off to the guy. He's always always speaks very well. Like, he never gets too angry, or he's not one of these managers that points the finger, and like he gives credit where it's due. And I have a lot of time for him. And I know he has that obviously a bit of an ex-Celtic connection, and he burnt a lot of bridges by playing for Celtic for that season. He basically, that was him, effectively sin binned for ever doing anything with Hearts and that, because he played for Celtic. So, but I just think he's a genuinely nice guy from everyone I've ever seen him in. So nothing to actually do about the tie tonight, but just that leading up to it, I just thought was quite interesting. But I expect Celtic to win comfortably tonight. I think we'll win 2 or 3-0. I think Duran will definitely get on the score sheet. I'm hoping who starts, he should be match fit. He's been playing halfway through the league he came from with Bodo Glimt, so he should be ready to rock and roll. My preference is to have both of them on the park at the same time and just go for the jugular and really make it easy for ourselves. I'd love this season to get off with a bit of a statement. Celtic Park, you come here, there's every likelihood you're going to get absolutely thumped. I want a bit of a fear factor back at Celtic Park for teams visiting. I want them to just absolutely just think they're going to get absolutely pumped, and that they need to play accordingly. But we'll see. Like I said, in 5 hours' time now, nearly. We're getting closer. Predictions, Paul, for tonight's match?
Yeah, I think we'll win tonight. I'm less confident on who's actually going to end up playing. Obviously, Scales is suspended. Bit of a question mark hanging over both Engels and Alistair Johnson. I think whether they play or on bench or even included in the squad will be very telling in terms of how far those potential transfers are down the road. It sounds like Alistair Johnson is actually further down the road than Engels. Engels sounds like there's been a low ball offer from West Ham. I think there'll be 1 or 2 other teams on the fringes kind of keeping an eye on that based on some previous stuff.
I feel like that's the Spider-Man meme of West Ham pointing to Celtic going low balling clubs. Like, I know we do that. What?
Yeah. But it looks like it's a 2-way fight for Alistair Johnson between Fulham and Everton.
That's what you want.
Exactly. And I know. We touched on the feet. A lot of people say if it's 15 million, it's way too low. It should be 25, 20. I've heard people say 20, 25, 30. Now,
I said 18.
I think if you push 15 closer to 20, you've done pretty well. I think if we end up getting 15, I don't think you can argue the toss too much.
He's a right back.
He's right. Well, the comparison I've got is the Cooper when he went from Bruges to Brighton last year. He was 24 years old, and Brighton paid 20 million for him. Now, I'm not sure you can say that you would expect to get more for a guy who's he'll be 28 in a few weeks. Turns 28, I think September, October. So, and he's had a terrible injury last season that recurred. Now there's nothing showing he's come through the World Cup. He came through the back end of the season. Nothing to say that, but that will put doubt in teams' minds. There's no resell. You get more for younger players. It's just a matter of course. A lot of people saying he's got 3 years left in his deal. Yes, it means we'll get closer to 15, 20 for him rather than 5 to 10. But that's all it does. It doesn't move him beyond 20 into 25. And you tend to get more. If you look at the players we sold for 25 to, Matt O'Reilly up to 30.
Kieran Tierney.
Kieran Tierney is the only defender that we've got big money for. The other players that have gone for big money, Jota, Dembele once upon a time.
How much did we get for Van Dijk back in the day?
9.
That wasn't a lot. No.
9. Actually, no. Yeah. 13.
There must have been a sell-on clause with Van Dijk, though. Surely.
So I think we made nearly as much on the sell-on as we did on the actual transfer.
Yeah.
So I think it was. I think we got 9 maybe for him, 9 or 10.
So we ended up probably 18, 20. Yeah.
Yeah, and we got kind of this. Yeah, the same again with the sell-on when Liverpool bought him from Southampton.
Defenders that aren't as glamorous as strikers.
Yeah, they're not. They're not, and that's the thing you're dealing with here. You're not going to get the same level of money. The board have got an obligation to try and squeeze every last penny out of that deal, but equally, if you've got an unhappy player, there's no point hanging on to them. So you've got to kind of balance. The only thing that as we've touched on earlier on, is that that European Cup Champions League tie is you might have to say to those players, you can go, but you've got to get us through this tie. Now, whether they like that or not, or it happens this week and we've got an immediate replacement coming in, and that can happen quickly, because the last thing you want to do is have the money
to stabilize it the week before.
Is you've got the money sitting in the bank, and then you're starting with Ralston or Donovan and McCowan if Engels goes.
With the greatest of respects.
No, look, they're solid players and they're good squad players, but you can't go into arguably the biggest tie of the season, or certainly the most important tie of the season from prestige point of view and from a financial point of view, with a depleted and stripped squad. It's just not going to work.
All right, I'm going to make some crazy predictions. Not that crazy, but just a few things that have popped into my head today. So I've had an exceptionally busy day at work today. I've had an exceptionally busy couple of weeks at work. So I'm season's kind of snuck up on me a wee bit. And I was like, are we doing a show this week, Paul? We probably should. So anyway, so my not so fearless predictions are that I think Aberdeen will finish top 4. I think Celtic will win a double. I think Derek McInnes will get sacked or resign. He won't be the Rangers manager by the end of the season. They're the 3 things. That's all. I'm going a limb on at the moment.
Well, Hamish had a whole list of stuff that if anyone's seen,
I haven't seen it, by the way. So I
over the last
know.
24 hours, he's published my comments accurately, but I would say that I've made a cock up at least one of them, and it was because I forgot there was that playoff round in the middle of the Champions League. So he's given me some examples of where we could end up, and he's kind of fished me a bit. I think, it's fair. It's my fault. I put us down for last 16 in Champions League. There's no way we're getting last 16 in Champions League. On an optimistic basis, I think we can potentially get out of the league structure if we make the right signings.
I'd be like 24th.
Yeah, and then we get in the playoff and we're not going to go through from there. So that's where I think we will. So that's my one little, and Hamish has published it correctly, but I've cocked that up. But that's where I think we'll end up if we do the right business. I think we can win a treble. I genuinely think the competition in Scotland's pretty weak this year. And if
I think Dundee United for the League Cup match is going to be a tricky tie.
I think it could be a tricky tie, and that's the one thing we should have mentioned is I would take Will Ferry in a heartbeat. It looks like Anderlecht might be stealing a match on us there. I think United are okay. They're solid. I don't think they're spectacular, but I think they will potentially be asset stripped before the end of the window. I think Ferry will be gone, whether it's toss a coin, but I don't probably not. Somebody else will probably pick him. And people say to me, "Oh, we've let Srirachi go, but we pick up Will Ferry." Well, you pick up 3 to 4 years of a differential, and you probably get him for cheaper wages. And he's he's a bit more flexible. I think the thing I like about Will Ferry is he could play left back, he could play wing back, he could play wing
back.
Yeah, like he's been playing wing back.
Celtic fullbacks in Scotland literally play as wing backs anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you've got the lion's share of the possession, you're effectively a wing back. So you want somebody who can whip in a good delivery, who can link up with your forward players. That the defensive attributes are important, but he
gets on the end of things. He gets on the end of stuff as well. Like he arrives into the box like a winger. He gets beyond players like a winger, an attacking player.
You're digressing, Paul.
I am.
What are your predictions?
I am. My predictions are treble and Champions League qualification. Probably do half decent in it. All caveated by the board actually spending some money. Beyond that, I agree with you. I think Aberdeen will be one of the stronger, best of the rest. I think Hearts will struggle.
Playing in Europe,
I think we try, same as Aberdeen did last year, like trying to battle on multiple fronts. We'll play havoc for them, and they'll have to play Thursdays, as will Rangers. I think that's a massive. If we can qualify for the Champions League, I think that puts us way ahead of the rest because we'll be playing first every week until the turn of the year, potentially beyond. But yeah, like it's all predicated on us doing at least some decent business. Now, I'm not expecting us to go absolutely bonkers, but I do have a minimum expectation that if we sell a player for 2025, we're replacing them with a player for 8 to 12, and so on and so forth. It's frustrating that it's players in to players out, but I think that's how we'll continue to do our business. And I would expect that O'Neill will roughly get what he wants come the end of the window.
Mahesh saying that Rangers have a squad numbers advantage over Celtic. I would argue that Rangers definitely have bodies in the building. I also think they need to get rid of some numbers to balance their books, because I think there's a few players there that need to go to sort of fund some of their transfer business.
They've got hefty wage bill is their problem.
I'd also say that Derek doesn't know what his best starting lineup is, and if he's having to play Lawrence Shankland every week, regardless of form, because he's named him captain, that might come back to be part of the reason why, it doesn't go the way they think it will. But yeah, they've got numbers, but I think there's a dearth of quality. I think they're very much there's a lot of same in that squad. There are a lot of players, but a lot of them very, just average.
Well, you're already seeing some of their hordes are already saying that Tavernier hasn't been replaced. Like they've got a weaker Ross McCrory.
The guy that they slated for 7 years running, who was scoring like striker level goals from right back, and every Celtic fan was like, he does a good job for them. Like maybe not against us, but he contributes, and they wanted him hunted, and then they're like, oh, we haven't replaced Tavernier. Like they get what they deserve. Anywho, it's an hour, so we might as well wrap it up there, Paul. Obviously, we've got all these recommendations because we've been so busy in the off season, watching TV, reading books, listening to music, going to gigs. Paul, what have you got for us?
Well, I have got a fair bit bubbling under.
Just save it. Just
for the new season. Drip feed. I have, and I am. To the point where this is a bit of a surprise show. We only decided 2 or 3 days ago we were actually going to do this. When we talked about this a few weeks ago, we said we weren't going to come on and start until we had a game to actually review. So that would have been next Monday. But Anthony was itching to get back on the air, so I have obliged. But I am therefore keeping my more current reviews or recommendations for next week onwards. But I will bring you 2 sort of retro recommendations, because that's what I've been in amongst retro stuff in the last few weeks. So regular viewers and listeners will know that I tend to recommend music quite a lot, album of the week, etc. We did a playlist at the end of last season, which I will continue to top up throughout the season. So I'll chuck a new track on that most weeks from the album I recommend on that week's show. So that will continue throughout the season, and rather than one big dump of a download, which is what I did last year. So my album recommendation is by a really retro band who broke through in the early 90s, called the Frank and Walters. Now, they had a massive hit with a song called After All, and the album it came from was brilliant. That came out in sort of 93, sort of pre-Britpop. It was kind of in that early indie phase around that time. It was, yeah. However, when I stumbled upon them on the algorithm kicks you stuff, and I've been listening to some Glenn Hansard stuff and the Frames this week on the back of obviously his passing. And that Irish thing sort of kicked in the Frank and Walters at one point. And I then went down a little bit of a rabbit hole in them, and I found that they then had another album in 2016. So many, many years after their peak or their breakthrough. And it's an album called Songs for the Walking Wounded. Came out in October 2016. It's absolutely great. So, if that kind of indie kind of Britpop era, post-Britpop stuff is of any interest to you, and you remember the Frank and Walters from the 90s, I suggest you go and check out Songs for the Walking Wounded. And on a similar vein, on TV, I've got a TV show from 2012 to 2014, which I basically have bullied my wife into watching. I'm rewatching it. She's never seen it. And it is the Aaron Sorkin TV show, The Newsroom.
Which I couldn't get into that.
I was thoroughly enjoyed it at the time. Back into
Jeff Bridges, Jeff Goldblum. No, Jeff Goldblum. Jeff, which one?
Keep going. Keep pressing and guessing. It is Jeff, and now I've gone blank. But yeah, great ensemble cast. And
it was so spammy, Paul. Couldn't get into it, mate. Sorry.
He plays Will McAvoy, and it is Jeff Daniels. Jeff Daniels, Ellie Mortimer.
Dumb and Dumber. Dumb and Dumber.
But yeah, really good cast. Like Jeff Daniels, Emily Mortimer, Alison Pill, Dev Patel, Olivia Munn, and Sam Waterston, amongst quite a few others. I really enjoyed it. It's like Sorkin. It's quite talky. It's quite snappy dialogue. There's a bit of sentimental stuff in there as well. But yeah, it's basically ensemble cast, multiple stories, mixing of personal lives and professional in a newsroom who's committed to try and telling proper news stories, compared to the trash that TV news had become, 24-hour news had become. It's sort of real time in delay. So sort of, season one is sort of the news from the year before or 6 months earlier.
The Tampa crisis with the oil tanker spill.
That's one of the stories in there. The Boston Marathon bombing, that sort of stuff. Like real stories that they're playing, and obviously a kind of fictional news team. But yeah, if you like Sorkin, West Wing, that sort of stuff, and you've missed this, you may well enjoy it. It's on HBO.
Just watched The West Wing. I went and watched Spider-Man Brand New Day. I went to the pictures, the films, the movies, first time in a long time. My mate dragged me. He's like, when are we going to see this? And I went, I'm really busy, like I can't. So we went at 9:30 on a Thursday night. We're both knackered, like we're exhausted. Had a couple of beers before we went and watched it, which was not a good idea. So anyway, really well acted. Tom Holland. I always had a wee bit of a question mark over Tom Holland. Is he a one-trick pony? Like, does exceptionally well. Zendaya is only in it for Zendaya, how you say her name, 15, 18 minutes of the movie. She's excellent. And I sort of go like, how did she get her money? Like, how is she so good? She's exceptionally good in this. The whole cast, everyone who plays their parts, there's a lot of supporting actors in this film. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it and wants to see it, but the cast is very, very strong. The acting is very good. Like the story, first two-thirds really strong, and I kind of feel like it thingies out a bit near the end, but really the action scenes are good. Just a really, really solid action superhero movie. It doesn't probably fall into that third act trope that Marvel movies where everything has to blow up and get bigger and whatever. So yeah, really, really good. But yeah, I'm very impressed with the acting. I thought the acting was incredibly strong, very, very more grown up, because obviously this is the first movie of the new Spider-Man trilogy. So yeah, really good, highly recommend, and it's getting critically acclaimed. It's getting really good reviews. So yeah, just
shot in Glasgow as well, right?
Correct. Yes, because you can afford to shut down streets in Glasgow. You can't shut down streets in New York, apparently. So Glasgow does a pretty good New York, because yeah, it looked like New York to me.
It was getting shot when I was back last year. Like literally, I was only in Glasgow for like 2 days, and yeah, we had to take a detour around the city to get to the hotel because it was being shot in the center of town.
How dare you?
And we saw some of the street names like were still changed because they were still got more days to shoot. So yeah, it was a bit of an event in Glasgow last year, and I think there's some decent weather for it as well. So yeah, I will get around to seeing it, but I will probably wait for the comfort of my own home.
I still need to see the Odyssey. I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it in IMAX. It's just trying to find the time. I think I've got Zara on board to see it. I just need to actually just find a time. And
are you getting a catheter? It's over 3 hours. I've got no.
I just won't drink before I go in. That's my problem. If I have a couple of beers, then yes, I definitely will need to drink.
The last time I watched. Sorry, I was going to say the last time I watched a movie over three hours long in the cinema, I had to basically fast, including liquid, for about 4 hours beforehand, because I was like, there's not a chance that if I'm just drinking water or soft drinks, there's not a chance I'm getting through 3 hours without needing to go for a piss. So
I think this is a public health announcement. If you're over the age of 45, please get your PSA, your prostate antigen test done. Just get your numbers, know your numbers, because it's important. And if you're needing to take 3 pisses in a movie, that's probably a sign that you should see your doctor and get it checked out.
I drink a lot.
Thank you, Paul, for that public health announcement. That's very important. We're all about health in this podcast. Julian Arajo, if you're watching, feel free to get your manager, your agent, to reach out to our club so you can come back, especially if AJ's out the door, because we'd love to have you back, because that'd just be mental. That goal against Kilmarnock lives large, and also Tilly got beat 3-2 in the end.
4-3.
So 4-3. Sorry, 4-3. I knew it was some stupid score. 4-3. Good old Neil McCann, absolutely raging. You love to see it. We'll be back next week. I think we'll be playing Tilly in the weekend.
We will. Yeah,
we will be. Yes. So hopefully we'll see Neil McCann raging again, and we'll be winning, and we'll be covering that game on a grass park at Tilly. They've got a park now. It's no longer plastic. It's actually looking pretty good. They had the little robot mower on it. It actually looks pretty good. So yeah, that actually looks quite enticing. So we'll see how that goes. So we'll be back covering that next week. 8:30 our time in Western Australia, which is GMT +8, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, join us live, get in the comments section. Otherwise, watch us in delay. Leave a comment, leave a like. It helps other like-minded Celts find us online. We're back to our usual format next week. Fantastic catch up with you today, Paul. And as always, all that's left to say is hail, hail.
Hail, hail.